So we're continuing in this series that we're calling Own It, where we look at what it means to own different aspects of our faith. And we kind of started the first week last week with owning our faith and what it looked like to truly kind of take responsibility for our faith, what it looked like to really live into that faith. And I talked about some of our high school, or now our college students who, I got the text message and they were talking about how they saw God in the sunset or the sunrise that they went to go see. And I talked about that. It's really living it. That's our hope. We act in faith that y'all will go out and live out your faith outside of this place. And how exciting that is to us. And tonight I want to talk a little bit about what it means to own the Bible. And I'm not talking about just like I went and bought this Bible because I thought it looked cool, but you own the scripture as in like it becomes a part of who you are a little bit. You kind of take responsibility for what this story means and maybe even how you are kind of incorporated into this story. So when you hear me say own the Bible, don't think like you need to leave tonight and go buy a new Bible. It's fine. If you got one, that's great. If you don't have one, you could go buy one. But that's not necessarily the ownership thing that we're talking about. We're talking about really owning it, really taking ownership for it. Like I think about, and some of the dads and moms in the room when they remember college, and some of our fresh off being college students will remember like, there's a difference between when you rented a house and when you own a house. Like I've both rented a house and own a house now, and I treat them way differently. And tonight we're going to kind of look at like what it is. See, our fresh college students are really laughing because they really remember. I lived in a parsonage for a little bit in college, and sometimes I look back shamefully at parsonage life. But anyways, we're going to look at what it means to really own that, not just rent it. It's not something that we kind of do a little bit, or it's kind of a part of us, or maybe it's just something, a dwelling that we're in sometimes, but it's a part of really who we are. We own it. We have responsibility for this story. And so I want to look tonight in 1 John. See, we have 3 epistle letters from John, or who we assume is John. We really don't know for sure that John wrote 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. All we're really told is that John was written by someone who refers to themselves as the elder one. So someone who is elder, they say, just the elder one, we are writing to you. But we kind of, we think that maybe it was John that was writing. And so in 1 John, the opening of it, verses 1 through 4, there's this really kind of weird opening that this elder person writes in 1 John. And so when we read it, it sounds a little bit funny, but so I'm going to read a portion of it to you now. We announce to you that what existed from the beginning, what we have heard, what we have seen with our eyes, what we have seen and our hands handled about the word of life. The life was revealed, and we have seen, and we have testified and announced to you the eternal life that was the Father and was revealed to us. What we have seen and heard, we also announce to you so that you can have fellowship with us. Our fellowship is with the Father and His Son, Jesus Christ. We are writing these things to you so that our joy can be completed. And so the writer of 1 John opens with this kind of weird greeting about the things that we've heard, the things that we've seen, and the things that were there in the beginning. And it's really kind of an odd passage if you just look at it alone. But really, what John is doing, or who we assume wrote John, is giving kind of a history lesson as he starts his book. See, if you read commentary on this passage, commentary being kind of like, let's break this passage down. If you read commentary on it, one of the first things that they say is if you have never read the Gospel of John, the very beginning of the Gospel of John, that this passage would have been almost incomprehensible to the reader. They would not have understood it at all. They would have been completely confused by this whole language that the writer uses. So the writer of 1 John is kind of throwing back a history lesson to begin with. And so it's obvious that whoever wrote this letter was familiar with whoever wrote the Gospel of John, who we think was John. So we know that they were familiar with that writing, and he's going back and he's kind of throwing a throwback to that first passage. Now, in the beginning of 1 John, or of John the Gospel, does anyone know how the first Gospel, or how the Gospel of John starts out? You can almost recite it to me. Anybody? I was waiting for my seminarian back there. What was it?
In the beginning was the Word.
And the Word was with God, right? And the Word was God. And the Word has always been with God. So, hang with me, guys, back there. What the writer was doing was referencing the Gospel of John. And what the Gospel of John was doing to its readers when the Gospel of John started was saying, I want to point something out to you from the very beginning of this letter that I'm writing you, or to this gospel that I'm writing to you. I want to point out that Jesus has always been, and kind of throws out this history lesson of saying Jesus has always been around. The essence of who Jesus is was there in the very beginning of creation. So they make sure that the readers know that Jesus has kind of always been around. The essence of who Jesus was has always been around since the very beginning of time. It's this cool history lesson. And in 1 John, when we read this, he's planting in pieces of that very beginning from John the Gospel. He's planting it in, and he's weaving that in there, but he's also weaving it in there with really cool things. So listen to it again, knowing that he's kind of referencing 1 John, saying that Jesus was in the beginning, the very beginning. Jesus was there, and Jesus was with God and was God. And then 1 John writes to him and says, we announce to you what has existed from the beginning. We announce to you Christ that has been since the beginning. What we have heard and what we have seen with our eyes, what we have seen and what our hands have handled about the word of life. Life was revealed to us, and we have seen it, and we have testified it, and we have announced to it. See, to the writer in 1 John, he's writing to the people and saying, this isn't a history lesson anymore. We have seen Jesus. This is a present lesson. This is a here and now lesson. And in John the Gospel, he was saying Jesus has always been. And here John is saying Jesus is, because we have interacted with Jesus. We have seen Jesus. We have seen this story unfold. And not only have we seen it unfold, but we are a part of this story. We are a part of this story. On Wednesday night, I was talking with our Wednesday night guys, Bible study, and we talked about what it was that we do in this thing called Christianity. And we kind of talked about a little bit that we want to be nice to people, right? We want to love and encourage people, and we want to love God. And we broke it down to, why do we really want to do that? I mean, honestly, what does it matter if we love people? What does it matter if we love God? What does that do? And we broke it down eventually to this cool term called the Missio Dei. And the Missio Dei is what John was referring to when John started writing the gospel. Missio Dei was the mission of God. And God was starting to unfold God's mission in the earth when he said, in the beginning was the Word, in the beginning was Jesus, and Jesus was here, and Jesus was with me, and Jesus is me, and I'm sending Jesus to you. You see, earth after Genesis was kind of in this funk, was in this messed up place. So God started to unfold this mission, the mission of God, the Missio Dei. that Jesus was going to come and save the earth, right? And this still feels kind of like a history lesson, right? Creation messes up. It's in this period of darkness and funk and messed upness. Jesus comes. Jesus saves creation by going on the cross and raising again and forgiving all sins. But here's the really cool part of it. Jesus didn't make it just Jesus and God's mission. Jesus made it an us mission. It's not a history lesson anymore. It is something that we are a part of. And that's what 1 John is writing about right there. This isn't a history thing. This is a now lesson. This is something we are actively in all the time. So if you think about it like this, they had, here we go. They had this portion of the Bible, and this was still unfolding. And young people, this portion is still unfolding. This part of the Bible is still unfolding. It's still writing about us. We are a part of that, just like the writer of John was writing to those people, that you are a part of this mission of God. So owning our Bible is realizing that this isn't a bunch of history that we're reading. Part of it is history, but it's a story that we are actively a part of. The mission of God wasn't, it was. The mission of God is right now. And as we follow Christ, we are unfolding that in creation. We are helping God perform God's mission here on earth. Last night we were at Lakeshore for high school fall retreat, and it was really cool. I realized that yesterday afternoon that it had been nearly 15 days, pretty close to the exact time, since I had been a teenager at Lakeshore 15 years ago as a 15-year-old, so I'm nearly 30 next month. I accept all sorts of gift cards for my birthday. So it's been nearly 15 years since I was there as a teenager. And I accepted Christ for the first time. And for me last night, as I looked back on it, I was like, man, I cannot believe I've been a part of the mission of God for 15 years now. And young people, I don't know where you are in your walk right now. But I promise you that this book is not just something to study because it's history. This book is something to study because it is active and present and real in this very room. It is something that we are helping unfold even now. And I pray that you would consider tonight where you are in that journey. Whether you feel like maybe you are an active participant in that story, or maybe you're looking on the sidelines saying, man, that looks real cool, but I don't know if that's really for me or not. But I promise you that God is calling you off the sidelines saying, I would love for you to be a part of my mission. I would love for you not to be a part of a history book, but a now and present book. Let me pray for y'all.